Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Remco Rinkema, and you are watching Run It Back. Today, I am very excited to be joined for the final show of 2020 by my good friend Daniel Negreanu to watch some old school throwback action from the vault that I recently dug up that we'll be releasing soon on PokerGO as well. But Daniel, first and foremost, we have to start off with the hot topic of the day. The challenge versus Doug got to the halfway point yesterday. Give us a brief summary of how you're feeling right now, because a lot happened over the last few weeks.
That last session was a doozy. When you talk about action, we only played 279 hands, which is the shortest session we played. And part of the reason was we wanted to stop at the halfway mark. But in that 279 hands, I think after about 200 hands, I was stuck like 200,000 because he had, like 3, 4 stick coolers. And I'm like, all right, well, he had aces twice and queens once. And all 3 times I had pocket jacks, turn top pair, 3-bet pot, and then had like a flush draw that would have hit a jack. So didn't look good. And then the last 79 hands, actually in about a 10-minute period, he bluffed. He ran a couple big bluffs where I had it. So I ended up getting it all back and winning 40,000 on the session. So that definitely felt good going into the 12-5 mark. But it was definitely the most action-packed session of all, especially considering the number of hands we played. But I feel good. I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun playing. I think I've gotten a hell of a lot better. I could see myself playing heads up, no limit, like long term. I enjoy it that much that I could see myself, continuing to do matches like this, in the future with all the, the geniuses of the world.
Yeah, so the match will continue, of course, pending your approval on January 4th on the Gigi Poker YouTube channel if you guys want to follow them as well and stay up to date. Yesterday, I was fortunate enough to provide some commentary. It was a lot of fun, and it also made me realize how awful I am at heads-up poker, which is just one more thing to work on in 2021 as I try to, not suck at poker. For everyone joining us for the very first time, this show, Run It Back, takes some old classic footage, and I've had Daniel on the show in the past, to relive some of these moments, tell some stories, and take some questions from the chat. So if you have any questions for Daniel, please send them into the chat. We are live on Facebook, on Twitch, and on YouTube. If you're enjoying the content, please follow, like, subscribe, and do all that good stuff. Daniel, I think it's appropriate, given that this footage is fairly old, to listen how Lon and Norm announced the intro so we can sort of set the scene for what this was like back in the day. So let's just listen to these first 2 minutes and get back into this old school feel.
In 2004, Daniel Negreanu was on top of the poker world.
Yes!
The undisputed player of the year. 2005 saw a reversal of fortune with a string of disappointing finishes.
I'm gone. It's a long walk.
But that only strengthened his resolve.
I might be one of the most competitive people you've ever met.
Now Negreanu's back at a final table.
Tide's turning.
And he won't settle for second place.
It's not about the money for me at this point. It's all about just winning everything.
To win here in Tunica, he'll have to get past 8 challengers.
It could get real interesting.
Each bring their own unique style to the table.
I don't want to disappoint.
And all know to be the best, they have to beat the best.
Daniel, of course, is the best player at the table.
He's going to be a really tough guy to beat.
Daniel's definitely to be reckoned with.
It really feels good to be back.
Yes.
Can Negreanu put an exclamation point on his comeback? Find out next.
I got faith. That's all you need.
All right, those beautiful tunes always get me all worked up. This was in Tunica, and Daniel, you alluded to this very briefly on yesterday's Doug versus Daniel stream. But this event was not on your schedule, I guess a week prior to it happening.
Yeah, so as you can see, I was all decked out in full contact poker gear, which is a company that I started basically, and I was self-funding, right? It was an online poker room, and we were really like thriving and doing well, but like, to grow, you got to put money in. So the guys came at me and said, listen, we need like 500,000 to pump in, into the system for marketing stuff, like 500K. I'm like, all right, when's the next tournament? When's the next WPT or whatever? And they're like, or something. And they go, oh, well, there's one in Tunica this week. It's a circuit event. And I was like, what is it? 10K? All right, cool. So I book a flight to Tunica, fly down there with the intention to go get in the 500K. Things went well, came back after the trip, took the cash, put it on the table, go, my job is done here.
Oh my God, that's incredible. Some iconic characters from the past: Wendell Barnes. We have Brian King here at this final table, of course. The amazing Chad Brown, who sadly is no longer with us as well. it's so cool to see this old footage, and I'm so happy that it exists because it provides such a great moment in time. And I jokingly put the hashtag Say No to GTO promoting this show on Twitter, because this, of course, was a completely different era. You were probably as far ahead of the competition of any point in your career. Is that a correct assumption?
Well, yeah, no question about it. Obviously at that time I was playing a style that was completely exploitative because I didn't know what the hell no one knew what the hell GTO was. What's game theory optimal, blah, blah, blah. A couple of people tried to play mathematical or whatever, but they did a lot of dumb stuff. They were not playing game theory optimal. So I created, essentially, not from scratch, from learning from a lot of other players I played with, a system, if you will, a small ball system that was very, very effective for a long period of time. And obviously, as players got better, they started to mimic my bet sizes by making them smaller, and took it to the next level and, improved upon it even more. But I remember this final table being so much fun, specifically because of Mr. Wendell. Wendell, this was the time when that song was going on, Mr. Wendell, yeah, yeah. So I kind of nicknamed him, and he was a true character. And there's a lot of characters at the table. It ended up being I wouldn't say easy. Well, yeah, I would probably say easy, but it was a lot of fun. Here we go, King 6 of diamonds. Why the hell not, right?
Yeah.
And even in 2020.
Right. Small ball raises and playing, I guess this is a button raise in position. And clearly, together with your reads and your bet sizing, the edge to be had was absolutely staggering back during that era. This is 2006. For those unfamiliar, this is a WSOP circuit event back when those were still 10Ks, which is kind of amazing. Let's see what you do here.
Negreanu still leads.
Oh, it's a blind battle, by the
Checks
way.
it to Robert Schultz.
Small versus big.
Also. Turn card now is a deuce. Negreanu still
right,
in control.
I guess he raised the button and I
See
flat.
Negreanu on, his game has no discernible pattern. It's like a patchwork quilt, zigging and zagging every which way.
Schultz checks behind him. The river card is another deuce. Now all 5 cards on the board will play. You see the double check mark.
Yeah, they would chop the pot if they both stay in. They both have 2 pair with the ace kicker. They'll both play the board.
Let's see how they play this. Negreanu first, who is checked after the flop and after the turn.
Weird.
28,000.
28,000 to Schultz.
Well, Schultz has not made a single play at this pot. He called from the big blind and then checked twice behind Daniel. So Daniel might figure, I might be able to take this down right now with relatively little risk.
His mom, Jody, already looks frazzled here early at the final table. And her son gives it up. Negreanu with a nice bet on the river.
Easy peasy, stealing pots left, right, and center. That was, of course, the way you amassed stacks in almost every tournament back then, right? People were just scared of you after seeing what you did in 04.
Well, the key thought process there is that back then, people didn't balance their check range very often. So when he checks flop and checks turn, by that river, he just can't have anything. He always has the board. That's how people played back then. If they had an ace, they'd feel I got to protect it. So maybe they would delay c-bet, where they didn't bet the flop, but they bet the turn, right? But they would not check twice with an ace or, a 5 or something like that. So it was basically like a free bet. The only concern, of course, is if he had a hand like 2 9s or 2 8s, but, YOLO. Sometimes you gotta just throw the stab out there.
Lee Markhold and Brandon Adams also at this final table, so definitely quite a few recognizable names for those that are still following the poker action. Those guys have made many final tables. Once again, here's a hand. Was this a limp? Did you limp in with the King Jack?
Not King Jack suited. I don't think I limped King Jack suited. Sometimes back then I would limp with King Jack off or Queen 10 off, but I would never limp with the suited ones. So I'm pretty sure I raised.
Little min
raise. I raised for sure. I had to.
That will go into the muck. Wendell Barnes now on a roll coming into this event, having already won a tournament after arriving in Tunica.
Mr. Wendell.
You knew I was calling.
5-4
Friendly
spades.
poker, right, buddy?
That's it.
Wendell says he's in the hand.
Calls, and we're gonna play a
Friendly poker.
Forgot what I had already. Let me look again.
5-4 suited. All you had to do was ask.
Negreanu with the King Jack suited in the lead as these 3 go to the flop. Flop is ace, 3, jack, all spades. Barnes flopped a spade flush.
And he's even got a straight flush draw. And Wendell Barnes will be first to act. He's chewing a little faster, but he will check.
Brian King has rejoined us as we go to Daniel Negreanu. Suited King Jack shrunk a little bit. He checks also.
Schultz hit bottom pair.
This hand probably not going anywhere in particular, so it gives us some chance to take some questions from the chat. got two questions actually from different platforms. Both people wondering, how did you actually get into poker? I mean, I know you've probably answered this question 1,000 times, but given that we have multiple people asking the same thing, how did you find the game? That's the question.
Well, yeah, the short story is I was a snooker player, as a teenager, loved playing in the pool halls and stuff. And, you become friendly with some people there. And they would say, like, we're going over to our buddy's house and playing a game called poker. I was like, okay, well, I had $10. Went over there, we played crazy gates, like do all these crazy wild card games, follow the queen and kings and little ones and all that stuff. And I lost my $10 in like 10 minutes. And I watched for a little bit, I had my beers that I was drinking back in the day. And, I found it interesting. And then we started doing that pretty regularly. And I noticed like, wow, same guys keep winning. I thought this game was all luck. And that intrigued me because I've always been very competitive. And I was like, wait a minute, there's more to this than luck. So I started to notice, I'm like, oh, I see. So these guys don't go all the way to the river every time. Sometimes they throw their hand away. Wow. It was like epiphany number one. You get to fold some bad hands. And then, of course, I, continue to learn from there. But that's how I got into it, just in basement games, with friends as a teenager.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel as though we as viewers can all relate to that. We probably all have similar stories of how we got into the game of poker. By the way, everyone across all platforms, let us know where you're watching from. I'm already seeing quite a few people from Toronto tuning in today. Hopefully they are here. I'm seeing someone living on Bathurst already. It's kind of funny. I lived in Toronto as well for a while. Love the city. Definitely miss it. And yeah, that ties into my next question here. Got a lot of NHL questions, so I'm gonna put all the hockey questions in one go here. How did you like the shortened NHL season for the Cup? What do you think is going to happen this season? Who are your favorite teams? And what do you think is going to happen to your two favorite teams, the Leafs and the Knights?
Yeah, well, before I get to that, I want to just say how cool, how perfect is it that Wendell is a welder?
Oh,
like
my God.
Wendell the welder. I mean, you just can't make this shit up. So for hockey, I mean, I think, listen, much like, a lot of different sports and World Series, we had to do the best of it, to make the best of a weird situation. So I think they did really, really well. Creating the bubbles, it was fun to watch. And I think, making the season happen this year, hopefully with the vaccine coming, fans will be able to come back pretty soon. As far as teams go, I think Toronto got very lucky to be in the all-Canadian division. No disrespect to Canada, but because I am Canadian, but the division is weak. It's going to be a lot of scoring, it's going to be very easy for Toronto. Now, that also guarantees one of the Canadian teams will be in the Final Four. So you don't have to go through Boston, Tampa Bay, all these tough divisions like you see in the East. So I think Toronto will have a very easy time of it. I think Vegas, the bottom half of that division is very weak as well. But they do have some tough competition with Colorado and St. Louis for winning the one seed. So their path to the Stanley Cup will be more difficult because they're going to have to beat, Colorado or St. Louis at some point. In order to get there, whereas Toronto can play like the Montreals and Calgarys, which should be a little bit easier. So it should be interesting to see. I think both teams will, either win the division or be like top two, top three. I can't imagine. Actually, I think I don't think you get a good price on it, but I think Toronto's a pretty good favorite to win the Canadian division just because, they do have a lot of talent, and I think they've made some moves now that added some grit and some toughness, and they've got some depth. So put them on your radar there for winning that division, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. The season kicks off in basically 2 weeks, so very curious to see how that'll play out. Big fantasy implications this year for you. How's the league going?
My God, I'm so excited. That's all I've been doing. I'm studying, of course, poker because I got this match going on. But at the same time, I've been doing all my fantasy work because it's crunch time. I have to submit my rosters in a couple days, and this is the funnest thing. I've been in the same league with the same guy since 1996, all from Toronto. And I'm going to sign a guy this year because we have a keeper, right? It's a fan. I'm signing a guy for 15 years. So I'll have him when I'm 61 years old. His name is Jack Hughes. He was a rookie last year. Didn't have a great season, but that means I can get him at a very good contract, 15-year deal, the longest deal I've ever given. He's going to be my new franchise player. So it's been a lot of fun. I've been rebuilding for 3 years. 3 years of a rebuild. This is year 4 of the rebuild. So now we're going to start to try to add some pieces. I got a whole really solid young team. Sebastian Aho, Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, as I mentioned, lots of young up-and-comers. I'll probably pick up Tim Stützle this year at the draft as well. So it's a lot. It's probably the funnest thing I do in my life. And I was telling my wife that last night. She's glad I love it because I spend so much time on it, and it's not for money. We play for $60. It's not about the money. I just love it. I love hockey, and the fantasy aspect of our league is the coolest thing ever. We have 23 men on our regular seat team, and then we got another 20 on the farm. So that's
Wow.
20 owners, each team having 45 players or so. So it's, if there's a player who scored 30 points last year, he's in our league, and he's drafted for sure.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I've really been getting into hockey over the last few years, and I'm pretty sure that you have been pushing a lot of people listen to your podcast and following your content to also keep an eye on things. Lots of shout outs for people that are representing their favorite teams in the chat. Can't get to all of them, but I appreciate it. Let's get back to the action here. From the players at the table, I'm sure you knew Brandon and Lee Markhold and Chad Brown and the other players, relative unknowns. But would you say that you were by far the best player at the table, or did Lee and Brandon and Chad also have good poker chops at this point?
Yeah, I would definitely say that, when it comes to tournament poker, specifically, I was the best player at the table. Having said that, I was considerably afraid of Brandon Adams. I was, because I knew he was part of this, younger math group. And I was also just concerned about him putting me in tough spots with some big bluffs and spots, right? Where at the time, you could pretty much pinpoint. Chad Brown was a little more conservative. He was going to have it, if you will, in these spots. And the rest of the players I felt like played pretty ABC. But Brandon was the guy that I was a little bit concerned about tangling with in big pots, because I wasn't sure what he was capable of. He was probably the one guy that was most capable of super advanced high-end bluffs. So in this pot here against Chad, I was probably rooting for Chad just because I didn't have to deal with Brandon later on, because he's trickier.
Yeah, big all in here. Let's listen in.
I need your jack.
Jack would give Chad Brown a straight.
Let's go, Brandon.
Suddenly, Chad Brown has joined the Brandon Adams rooting section.
He doesn't look any different, Brandon.
No, he doesn't.
Adams, looking on anxiously. Chad Brown in danger of going out in ninth. Turn card now. 8 of hearts.
Oh, that's bad news.
And that's no good for Brown, because Adams now with a flush draw, so that closes Chad Brown's options. Chad Brown here at his third circuit final table, looking for the ring, but he's going to need a non-heart ace, queen, or jack, or he's going home.
And now the river card is a king of diamonds, and Brandon Adams wins
Good luck,
the
everyone.
hand, drawing first.
Chad Brown eliminated here from the final table. If you're just tuning in, this is Run It Back. We are watching a 2006 WSOP Circuit Final Table, a 10K buy-in event from Tunica. Daniel Negreanu is at the final table. And of course, the only reason he was here is because he needed a few extra bucks to pay for his, to make his brand even bigger, Full Contact Poker, back in the day, where you had an awesome blog as well. Let's dive a little bit into the memories of this era. Of course, 03 Moneymaker happens. 04 you have your massive breakout year with just an incredible amount of wins, Player of the Year, all that stuff. And then 05, as referenced here at the start of this broadcast, you had a down year. Nothing really worked. Nothing was really going in your way. What was that like, going through sort of a relatively bad year coming off of such a big one?
Yeah, before I get that, I wanted to say a couple words about Chad Brown, because a lot of people who didn't know who Chad Brown was, maybe newer to poker. Chad Brown, and I'm not saying this lightly, he was probably the nicest guy in poker. It was just such a gentleman to be, at the table. And he was valiantly fighting cancer, and very brave, and just sort of, he still was an optimist, even though, it didn't look so good for his prognosis. As far as, at the time, I think after 2004, I wouldn't say I got bored with poker, but poker was just kind of easy, right? Because I had a system that was so far ahead of what everybody else was doing in tournament poker. I would say that it's hard to say who's the best, because luck plays a big role. But I think in 2004, that felt very true to me, that I was the best, specifically no limit hold'em tournament player in the world, because of the things that I was doing naturally were exploiting the specific weaknesses of the field, if you will. So it felt really, really good. And I think in 2005, I was probably just a little more complacent. I'd already kind of done everything. 2004, as you said, I was World Series of Poker Player of the Year. I was World Poker Tour Player of the Year. I was what do you call it? Card Player of the Year, And it's okay, well, you can sort of rest in your laurels a little bit. But the fire always comes back, even though, so there's little, ebbs and flows in terms of my interest in poker. Right now, I've never enjoyed playing poker more. I'm loving it, and I wouldn't say that's true for my entire career. And that's just kind of how the game works, I think, where, you're going to have those moments of fire. And I love the game so much that I don't think that'll ever go away.
Big move here. Schultz all in with 7. You have 9s. Clearly a best case scenario for you. So while this runs, we'll keep our chat going. By the way, for everybody viewing, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoy the content. We're also taking questions as I see fit. I'll squeeze some in. Lots of people interested about the Doug versus Daniel match. That, of course, rejoins or restarts on January 4th. I really appreciate everyone. And also people saying Chad Brown would have made the Hall of Fame. He might still. That's still a possibility in the future. Of course, Hall of Fame discussions always ongoing. I never agree with any of the takes on the Hall of Fame. I think the whole system is broken, and I think that Daniel and I are exactly on the same page. And it blows my mind time and time again. Let's get upset here for a brief minute here. Can we fix the Hall of Fame? Is it possible?
I would hope so. And on Chad Brown, right? Like I said, I love the guy. He's one of the nicest guys in poker. If I look at his resume in poker, I don't think, if you sort of just give everybody who's a nice, good guy, put him in the Hall of Fame, you're going to just have a really wide Hall of Fame that, doesn't hold a lot of meaning. Like, he didn't post the kind of results that were, at the top of his game. And there's a lot of other people who did first. So for me, I actually wrote out several times in blogs, like the changes I'd like to see to the Hall of Fame. I think the criteria should be a lot more clear, because currently the way that it's written, if you're a player, it shouldn't matter whatsoever if you were a nice person at all. You could be the biggest jerk who was arrested 15 times for, drunk driving or whatever. But if your poker results said that, you were worthy, that's what should have mattered. And it sort of got bastardized a little bit. I blame, frankly, and, this is their choice. But, when media had a vote, or when they have votes, they sort of vote for like, oh, we love that guy. He's a big name. I'm like, but he's not good, or like, he's not as good as some of the other players on this list. So I believe that the players that have played against all the players should be the ones making a decision. This year, the Hall of Fame vote goes to those that are in the Hall of Fame already.
Right.
And for this year, I believe, one of the things that I would fix is I would put a builder in every 3 years and not nominate him every other year. Because, that way at least one builder goes in every 3 years. So then the Matt Savage types, along with, Isai Scheinberg, who got all my votes this year. I think if there is a builder category, it kind of would be silly to not have Isai Scheinberg in that builder category. I've seen some of the takes, and I was really like, eye-rolling. This Norman Chad dude was like shitting on Isai Scheinberg, right? Who has been one of the most influential, in a positive way, people in poker. And what a weird thing for Norman to do. He's nominated, but he's shitting on the other nominee. It's like such a bizarre fucking take. And maybe because he only did that because I said, I think Isai deserves it, right? So I think I do think Isai deserves it, no question about it. People say, well, what about his legal issues? I'm like, listen, he never they settled. He bailed out almost $1 billion worth of player funds from Full Tilt that he did not have to do whatsoever, right? He was not convicted of a crime that put him in prison or whatever. It was essentially the same as a parking ticket. Got a parking ticket for transaction fees, a $25,000 fine, which was paid, no legal issues. The idea that he's not, eligible for the Hall of Fame because of, running an online gaming site, it's just so ridiculous that the takes are so stupid that it boggles my mind. So I gave all my votes to Isai, and I do think there's a lot of other players on that list that deserve some recognition. But I just think that it's important because it's a long time coming. Like, I think Isai should have been in the Hall of Fame like a while ago, but I know that part of the reason was, the case wasn't settled. This case is settled. It's all done. He literally rescued the entire poker industry and grew it more than anybody else. Like, you can see guys like Moneymaker who, grew, but the precipitous of that was, Stars and Isai creating that, option for someone like a Moneymaker to even exist. So, but I would definitely make some changes where we would make some clear delineations of what it requires in order to make it. And I don't know. I don't know if it'll ever change, but it is what it is. Right.
This is a big hand coming up, so I'm just going to pause it right here because this hand is going to be huge. I want to wrap up this Hall of Fame conversation because I have a question for you. With sports, NFL, NBA, golf, no matter what it is, a player, golf, it applies a little bit less to, but most of the normal leagues it does apply to. You have a career arc that lasts for 8, 10, maybe 15 years, during which you perform at the peak of your powers before retiring from that sport because you're simply unable to play. In poker, that will never happen. You can play until you literally die at the table. And that has happened in the past. People just play because it's such a great game. And, Doyle said it best. You don't get old because you stop playing. Whatever that was. You get old. You get old because you stop playing. Everyone knows the saying. So my question is, how do we gauge Hall of Fame stuff for poker players? Do we look at a 10-year peak? Do we look, because take someone like Mattisau. he was probably way ahead of the game for quite a long period of time. Currently, I wouldn't say that he is, at the top. Maybe in Omaha 8 he still is, but in other games, clearly there's been so much studying going on that it's just impossible. So how do we gauge that in poker? What is the right way to assess someone's peak and success as it relates to the Poker Hall of Fame?
Yeah, right. So you're speaking to one specific criteria that says, stood the test of time, right? Well, let's define what is the test of time. Like Tom Dwan was at the peak of everything right now. And, I don't know, he's not in the public eye as much. He's playing in private games or whatever. So has he stood the test of time? It's hard to define that. So I had some ways, and I'm going to find this blog and I'm going to repost it because I think it was really, really, I think so because I fucking wrote it, but it was well thought out. And for me, I would say, about at least a decade of being at the top of the game. But I also think it's important to delineate now that poker's advanced. Like, you have to be exceptional at one specific part of the game. So you don't necessarily have to be great at everything, but you either were the top online player, you were one of the best in online, you were one of the best tournament players, you were a cash game killer. You have to be exceptional at something, not just like, oh, he was pretty good at all of it. No. You have to like really stick out, unless you are, a Bobby's Room player who is well-rounded, and plays all the games and all that kind of stuff. Then, because that was what the Hall of Fame was originally for. If you didn't play in Doyle Brunson's game in the big high stakes, like, you weren't even eligible, because I don't think of, no limit hold'em as poker. It's one form of poker. And as you know, I know you love mixed games as well. So the mixed games guys always get preference from me, because I think that requires a diverse, number of talents versus like specialists. So if you are a specialist in something, you need to be amazing at it to get my vote. Like a guy like Chris Moorman, for example, right? Chris Moorman, I don't know what his cash game prowess is like. He hasn't really crushed the live arena. This guy was like legendary online player, like legendary, So for that, I would say, okay, he's got exceptional status because of he dominated one specific, aspect of poker. So, that's what it would require for me to, to put my vote on somebody like that.
Right. And this becomes more and more complicated as the entire, I guess, moneymaker generation will turn 40 in the next 10 years, depending on when they started. And then there's going to be so many people that hit that age requirement. And then we have to assess whether they're ready to be inducted and how long it will take. And has everyone gotten in from the boom era and prior? Like, I think that the Hall of Fame gets more complicated every year we move forward, right?
Yeah, for sure. And Moneymaker's a perfect case, because listen, I love Moneymaker. We've been friends for since he won. I've never had a bad thing to say about him. I didn't think he was Hall of Fame worthy personally, and he knows this, and and he would agree that like his career, if you look at his stats or whatever, that's not Hall of Fame worthy. So right. Why was he inducted? He was inducted because of his effect, his effect on the game, his influence on the game, which was real. But the question is, are we voting on him as a player, or are we voting him as like the builder, right? And in terms of building, outside of winning the tournament, and being a great ambassador for the game, like, specifically what things did he build in that regard, right? So if we look at him strictly as a player, not Hall of Fame worthy, I think he would agree, right? So then you're essentially saying he's a builder. So because as a player, it says nothing about your influence on the game. The player category, it's all about your play. Right. It also says, or if you contributed to the game in a positive way, as a builder in some case, right? So I guess, as a builder, that's how you would classify Moneymaker as getting in. And again, I would say that someone like Isai Scheinberg, takes the lead in that regard. But again, that's the thing. It's like everyone has a different view of what a Hall of Fame means. And I go puristic. I look at the actual rules of the vote and say, okay, based on this criteria, would I vote for Moneymaker to go in? And I'd say, obviously he's famous. Obviously, if you just think of like Hall of most famous people, but that's not what a Hall of Fame represents. It represents, excellence in a field. And I think, he's like a perfect example of where it sort of is wishy-washy and unclear in terms of what we're voting for, right? So if Moneymaker went in, if there was, like I said, every 3 years, like a builder went in, put Moneymaker in the builder category. He would never belong on the player side, right? Because, it's just, and again, he would be the first to readily admit that if you look at his career, it wasn't like, Hall of Fame worthy so far. He could still crush. Who knows? Maybe he'll get all GTO on us.
I hope so. All right, let's watch this hand. Aces against Barnes.
40,000 more. And a quick call from Wendell Barnes.
As always, let's see a flop.
Here we go. Ace 3-9. Wow! Barnes thinks he hit it perfect with aces up, but Negreanu in command with 3 aces.
They both do love to see flops, Lon, but this could be a fatal flop for Wendell Barnes.
Negreanu first to act. Slow plays it. And Wendell bets 90,000. Uh-oh.
Don't pull the teeth out on me.
Oh, this is a critical moment, so the teeth have to come out.
Let's play some poker.
How can you not love this guy? And Wendell drove 19 hours with a friend, Lon, from Massachusetts to get here, and he's having the time of his life.
You're the man, Wendell.
I love this.
Now Negreanu working on his Best Actor award.
Yeah, Daniel is trapping his new buddy here, and he's trying to figure out the best way to do it.
And the trap is now set with the call. So now here we go. Advantage Negreanu, big time, going to the turn. And there it is. Negreanu with a full house earns the check mark. Dead welder walking. Check from Daniel.
And Daniel's still trying to trap his buddy. Don't do it, Wendell. We like you too much.
I'm all in.
I call.
And that's going to be it. Just like that. Daniel Negreanu knocks off his buddy Wendell Barnes.
Tough hand, man.
If Wendell had to be knocked out, at least it was at Daniel's hand.
Nice flop.
Boy.
Nothing you could do with that flop. It was a pleasure, buddy.
Another 9. Hey.
Yeah. I got MrWendell.com all lined up for you.
Wendell Barnes finishes in 7th place.
There's another elimination. 7th place, Wendell Clark. Wendell Clark, what am I saying? Shout out to the Leafs. That's funny how that popped into my mind. But yeah, you knocked out another one. Of course, big shove there on the turn, drawing absolutely stone dead. So you pick up even more chips. Chip leader right now. As you said at the start of the show, this was not a hard final table and made even easier by someone jamming into you. Let's see what he has to say.
You know, whether it's a little or it's a lot, it's all good.
So many amazing characters from back in those days, and this is one of them. I hope that if he's watching and still playing, that we can maybe see him at the World Series again when things return back to normal. I'm seeing some questions coming in across the board, Daniel, about the post-COVID live poker scene. People are asking what will you be motivated for? Are you excited for live poker to return? Maybe you have less excitement now that you've been getting used to the like living at home type situation and grinding online. So how do you view live poker in the post-COVID era?
Yeah, well, you're right about one thing. I've really been enjoying the fact that I can play in my underwear at my couch here at home, and I've really sort of taken to online poker. But yeah, when it comes to live poker, there's specifically one thing that I miss, and that's grinding the Rio every day. And, you know, the Rio gets a lot of flack from people, you know, like it's really like the perfect place in Vegas to have the World Series of Poker. You know, it's just accessible. And I love, you know, the grind of going down there and playing these $1,500 tournaments, $600, like all this craziness and just trying to win player of the year and stuff like that. It's a fun, you know, fun thing to chase. So that would probably be the thing. And I think there's a decent chance that there will be some form of like regular World Series and its regularly scheduled time. If not, I think, you know, maybe the fall, right? Like, seems like we're turning the corner. But outside of that, like in terms of travel and going to different countries and all that, I kind of prefer just not doing that. I like my life as it is here at home.
But then it does mean that you're probably going to be extra excited with all this new knowledge from the Heads Up series, applying that to some of the big high rollers.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think, and whatever, that could be delusional, but I honestly think I'm going to crush. Like, I think all this practice, because like when you're learning Heads Up poker, obviously it's a lot different when there's 6 or 7 players at the table. But the transition from like being really, really good at Heads Up with my 20 years combined of playing tournaments and just taking what I've learned now and incorporating it into my game there, I think it's going to make me like kind of a monster to play against. Like, I think I'm going to be very difficult to play against. I think I'm going to put my opponents in a lot more tough spots, which I think I was already doing. You know, I was already evolving my game in tournaments, but just the amount of work that I put in now, you know, like a lot of these young guys, you know, they get really good using solvers, right? Like you take them, right? You take me and my 20 years experience and add in the solver work. Like, I think I can, you know, I can gain more from that than they will, because I know how to sort of go, okay, so this will relate to this one thing that I do, and I can do this because of this. And it, you know, that sounds exploitative, but it kind of is. but it's based off of like sort of a GTO baseline that I understand now, you know, and I'm on a much deeper level. Like my understanding of game theory, obviously there are people that I understand at a much deeper level, but I'm pretty darn good. Like I've gotten pretty sharp in understanding spots. Like there was a big bluff that Doug ran against me in yesterday's, hand where he bluffed off with 8 deuce. As soon as I saw it, his hand 8 deuce, the board was ace jack 9 7 4, and he went all in. I was like, that was probably good. Like I mean, the exact combo that he had, I was like, yep, that probably is solver proof. And I was, and it was, his bluff was fine. And it wasn't like, a lot of people watching go, what an idiot, bluffing off with 8 high. What is he doing? Punting. I'm like, well, he's trying to play as close to game theory possible as possible. He needs to have some bluffs when he bets 4x pot. This is the perfect one. It was an interesting hand. I mean, I really would love to discuss that on a deeper level if I could. Maybe I'll make a video about it because there was a lot to it throughout the hand. But here I have a real hand here with aces and queens.
Yeah, it was a race from Lampkin from the button. You 3-bet from the small blind, and he made the call. And then, as we see, you flopped the nuts there with the 2 pair. Let's see what happens here on the river.
Betting wasn't a thing I did a lot back then. So this was probably like, people didn't know this, but ace queen was probably like the bottom of my 3-betting range.
Right.
Like I was not 3-bet bluffing here much, which is the play that, you should be making, especially when you're chip leader. You should be doing it more against the button raise. But I typically was flatting with a lot of these hands. Like if I had ace queen suited, I probably would have flatted, oddly, which is backwards kind of, but whatever.
And there also wasn't a lot of balancing going on back in those days. It was more straightforward.
There was no concern of balance. Like I was basically always trying to think of like, what does my opponent think I do in these spots and exploit at all costs. There's very few times where I thought I needed to be balanced.
This might be a tough question to answer, but did you pick up on more live tells back then, or are the amateurs still giving away a lot? And let's take pros out of the equation because that's, of course, a different realm. But have amateurs also changed in the way they play and act?
A little bit, but to be honest with you, like I don't really play against a lot of amateurs anymore, right? Like when I play and I'm playing high rollers, I'm playing against mostly pros. So they don't give off nearly as much, although there's always stuff. There's always subtle things people do that they just can't, they're likely not going to be able to control. There are a few guys who, one in particular, who's I find very difficult to read and get anything from, and that's Stephen Chidwick. I think he's spent a lot of time sort of focusing on a sort of a posture and that is pretty solid. Like, I mean, he's this guy, I don't know, he's got this back that he's like, he sits like this and he can do this for like 7 straight days without ever bending his back. Like, look, I slouch like this. Chidwick is just like robotically perfect with his posture. So I find like a guy like him to be very difficult to read. But across the board, I think, I won't name them, the people that I do have really good reads on, but I have some good reads on some super high end, like GTO players or whatever who, they give away some things that I don't know if anyone else has noticed this. Oh man, I wish I could share with you this one. This is so good. It's like unreal. And it's so clockwork. But when I spend time playing live, I dissect a lot of video. And what I'll do is I'll look at, this guy splashed his chips, right? What did he have, right? So I'll count. I'll basically have video dissected of each player. And I'll be like, I'll count the number of times that when he splashed his chips, he had nut in hand, middling value hand or bluff, right? And so, because these days, what you don't see is someone 100% do this with that or that, right? But there could be a tendency. So let's say I have 20 examples, 14 of those he was bluffing. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to give that some credence in the future when I see that. Like, I remember studying one specific player, and it was related to the way he cut his chips. And when he cut his chips a certain way, it was usually like a middling hand. And I remember doing all the study on him, and that came up the very next day when I played against him. And he bet the flop, and I just jammed on the flop because I was pretty sure he had a middling hand, and I didn't have anything. But he folded instantly. So, putting in the work helps for sure. There's a lot to be gleaned even today.
Big hand here. We got 2 top pairs and a flush draw with the backdoor straight.
I wonder if I get away from this.
Mark Holt, a pros pro. A lot of respect in the poker community. He's made 2 World Series final tables.
He's going to bet 60,000. King with a clubbed flush draw makes the call.
I have nothing.
Well, Danny doesn't have nothing.
Wow, that was a very quick fold. That's probably an indication of the times.
Yeah, it was one of those spots where if it was like bet call or something ahead of me, I mean, the ranges were so narrow that what am I hoping, that they both have flush draws? Because if they have an ace, they most likely have a better one. So Yeah, those were folds you could make back in the day very easily. Today, I mean, you're not just snap folding ace-10 on an ace-9-3 there for sure.
Yeah, for people that saw that, you picked up your cards immediately when King made the call, basically done with the hand as soon as the second player got involved there on the flop. King trying to decide here. I believe the shove is not very big. We don't have the exact bet sizes, but we'll see what he does here. For the people in the chat, by the way, if you have any questions for Daniel, please let me know. And don't forget to smash that like button. We're below 100 likes on YouTube. That's not really good. We need to hit like 250 or something. Come on, you guys. Come on. Show some support. Show some love. Thanks to everyone watching on Twitch as well. Playmaker says, I love you, Daniel. Wow, it's lots of love in the chat. I appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitch as well. Mr. Peacekeeper says, Kid Poker should be in the Hall of Fame. Daniel, how you feel about that one?
Just for the record, when I turned 40, first year eligible, I was a first ballot Hall of Famer, and I was in. I mean, whatever. Just call it tooting your horn or whatever. But if I wasn't Hall of Famer, then I don't know what. Then it would just be like, what the hell? Like I'm across the board. I mean, I was high stakes cash winner. Well, I'm not going to brag anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it was more a joke to make sure that people in the chat are aware that we are dealing.
We all actually described it as a no-brainer.
Right, and it is a no-brainer. It makes total sense. And for you to even take on that challenge against Doug just goes to show how much passion you have for the game and how much you're still willing to put yourself out there. Because that's the thing that I was most shocked about going back to the Doug versus your match with Doug is that you even said yes in the first place. Like, I was completely blown away. I was like, win or lose, I'm just shocked that you did this.
Yeah, so was he, because he was bluffing. He didn't really think I was going to do that, and he said this in the interview, so I'm not making stuff up. He didn't expect me to say yes. He's like, well, this is my format. Daniel's obviously never going to say yes, but he's like, he can just throw it out on Twitter. And I said yes. And he's like, oh shit, I guess I have to get ready to play. So, he has, and it's been, I don't regret it one bit. I mean, I regret running bad in the first 12-5, and I know that I have. I mean, there's literally no argument against the fact that I've run way below expectation so far. And as a result, I feel like, it's so much luck in heads up. That's the crazy thing. There's so much skill, right? Like in the long term, but there's so much luck in the short term. We run sims, right? Where you can say, let's say you take two players that are dead even in skill, right? And they play 10 million hands, say, for example. One of them is going to go on a 600 buy-in down. 600 buy-ins. That's insane for two players that are equally skilled, right? You would think that's impossible. But so luck's going to play a big role, and hopefully the second half of it, it runs my way.
One more thing on this match. How in the world did you not get at least a few live sessions of 8-game squeezed in there? Where are the mixed games? You yourself have said so many times that poker is not just about one game, yet you take on Doug on basically his terms in every sort of way.
Well, to his credit, he did offer me a second game to play, but it's heads up, and I felt like I didn't want to have to study two different formats. I was like, let's just do one. Because he has played heads up before in all the mixed games as well. And you can actually say, for example, if I picked stud 8, right, I have an edge. My edge is going to be so small, even if it's there, that it's negligible, right? Like, it's not like I could pick a game where I'm like, oh, he's dead in. You know what I mean? Like if I pick Omaha 8 or better, or stud 8 or better, or maybe like what would be like deuce 7 triple draw or something like that. Like how big could my edge be, right? So I didn't feel like it was worthwhile. And I also thought from like a fan perspective, it's just more interesting to watch No Limit Hold'em than it would be to see two guys playing stud 8. Stud 8 heads up to watch is paint dry. It's not fun to watch. It's fun to play, but it's not fun to watch for sure.
Chop, 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 chop. Quarter, quarter, quarter. That's basically stud 8 heads up.
On Third Street. Yeah.
That's true as well. People showing you lots of love, and Mr. Peacekeeper follows it up, and he realizes that he was in the wrong. I love how Daniel reads people like a damn book, pros or amateurs. And along the same lines of that, someone asked, do you have a read, or have you ever had a read on Phil Ivey, who is also known for his amazing poker face?
Well, I think Phil Ivey clearly has a read on me. Big time. Like, he laughed about it one time. He's like, he saw me do this thing. We were in Australia, guy raised, and I 3-bet, but I did this like thing before I 3-bet him. Like, I got all serious or whatever. He's in the small blind. He looked over at me. He folded this hand. He's like, that was some bullshit right there. And it was. I had absolutely nothing. I was 3-bet bluffing big time. But no, I think Phil Ivey's a guy who really has a solid read on me. I find him a little more difficult to read, but there's subtle things too, even with his game, that I think, I don't think I have like a solid read on him. like that's like, oh boy, he's bluffing now. You know what I mean? Although I did pick up one small thing, like I said, but we haven't played heads up, or we haven't played a long time together. So I wonder, if any of that's changed. But yeah, I miss playing with Phil Ivey at the World Series. That was like some of our funnest days. It's just him coming to the trailer and shooting the shit, and having some fun. He's in a real good place, and hopefully there is a World Series, and you will see Phil Ivey compete if there is one.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about the WSOP. Seeing everyone out there competing and having Phil back in 2019 was really cool to see. All of a sudden, I was walking through the Brasilia room and he was playing some $1,500, day one, and I was like, "Wait, is this the same Phil Ivey that used to net and didn't get out of bed for these events unless he had massive bracelet bets?" So that was really cool to see. And if you are interested in more Phil Ivey content for everybody watching at home, we have conversations with Phil Ivey on PokerGo. It's definitely a must-watch with Barry Greenstein interviewing Phil Ivey, and he gives a lot of open responses to questions that Barry asks about his life, about his past, and about his future. So highly would recommend that show. If you're new to PokerGo, use promo code HSP to take $20 off the annual subscription. We have new episodes of Poker After Dark every Sunday night and new episodes of High Stakes Poker. Yes, new episodes of High Stakes Poker every Wednesday night being released, and that's going to continue for the next 12 to 14 weeks or so, and hopefully by then we'll get back to filming another season of High Stakes Poker, because clearly that's everyone's favorite show. One more thing here, we have all new merch out, so go to PokerGoShop.com. We have shot glasses, beer glasses, stickers, hats, t-shirts, hoodies, all that stuff available in the shop. Use promo code REMKO, that's my name, REMKO, for 10% off your total purchase in our shop. On the topic of High Stakes Poker, Daniel, you were not, sadly, part of season 8, while you were part of every season prior, all 7 seasons, and it's not a mystery, or at least not something that people aren't aware of, that you did not fare too well on those 7 seasons of High Stakes Poker. Are you eager to be involved in season 9?
Absolutely, yeah. I've been loving watching it. I didn't play for 2 reasons. Number one, I was just playing heads up poker and studying for that, for this. And the second reason was, me and my wife, we've been incredibly COVID sensitive. And while the match against Doug seemed quite safe, it was just me, him, a dealer, we were tested, just, compounding the danger by having 8 people at a table and not knowing what they're up to and their bubbles and stuff like that. So I just felt like, okay, well, it's probably better for me not to play that. So I skipped it this year, but it's kind of been fun because I don't know what happens. So now I get to watch it as a fan, where I'm like, I can see a hand, and typically I would be playing on every session of High Stakes Poker, so I know what the result was, but I don't. So I get to just be an old school fan and enjoy the table banter and the crazy hands that come up. And I've been a proponent for this for a long time. I just think that live streams are great for diehard poker players who want to get better. But if you want to, get the average viewer watching, you need to edit the crap out and just make it the best of the best, of like an 8-hour session. Like nobody wants to listen to Mike Matusow for 8 hours, but they do like hearing him for like 3 minutes, talk about, maybe funny, but like of 8 hours, Mike's going to come up with like 7 minutes of funny. So just use that and cut out the rest.
I think that's one of the things that we as poker fans have highly underestimated through the course of the boom era, and talking from, Moneymaker until Black Friday, is that we went from these highly edited shows where Matusow was indeed funny because it was edited down, to all the way to before Black Friday, when we were getting more live stream focused, where all of a sudden, people were getting annoyed because, like you said, you can't do that for 12 straight hours. One little side note here, by the way, for the people on YouTube, we are only 500 subscribers away from hitting 100,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So if you are new to our YouTube channel, please subscribe. We'd love to hit 100,000 before the end of the year. That would be a major accomplishment for our channel. I've done almost 100 of these run back shows, dating back all the way to when the pandemic started, and I had Daniel on the show, I had Chris Moneymaker, Greg Raymer, Joe Hashim on the show. So if you guys have missed any of those, please go back and watch, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we want to hit 100K before the year is up. Keep those questions coming. I will get to a few more of those in just a second, as I'm keeping track of the chat across all platforms, and it's pretty wild. So let me try to see if I can stay up to date on that one. We got a 3-way situation here. Daniel not involved.
I've had to play.
I'm trying to run to the bathroom. Getting my head
Outside
set.
the table here. This is the key moment.
Oh my God, it's funny.
So you're waiting for the call, right? This is what you do sometimes, and you got to pee in the middle of a level. You're waiting. As soon as the call happens, it's going to be some hullabaloo, whatever. You can run to the bathroom and make it back without missing a hand. So I don't want to, if he folds, I don't. But now, yeah, I think he folded, so I can't run to the PP.
I'm gonna really sweat this, and maybe you'll wet your pants.
I'll just sit down then. You know what?
Daniel gives up.
I'll just sit down.
Now and Marco folds. Brian King
I'm not
takes
missing a hand.
Brian King climbing the ladder back into
Almost
the
there,
fray.
baby.
Daniel's going to have to wait to do what he wants to do.
You guys teased me good there.
Oh, that's funny.
King pads his stack.
For my own curiosity, what was your life like back in 06, and how different was it from what it is now? Of course, you went here on a whim to Tunica, but in general, was it, a weekly grind? Did you travel across the world on a regular basis, or, was it only because sometimes you had to do it for sponsorship reasons? And besides that, how different was it compared to now?
Yeah, well, 2006 specifically, full contact poker was my baby, and I was, building that up into what, into what ended up being a company worth a lot of money. But then Black Friday hit, and that changed everything. And I was actually, now that I noticed I had a wedding ring on, I'm like, I was married back then, I guess, for a couple of years. But yeah, so there was that. It was the home life. There was definitely the travel. But really, my main focus was building full contact poker up into a company that was worth a lot. And in 6 months from the onset, from day one of full contact poker being born till 6 months later, we had an offer on the table for $170 million from a big company to buy out. And we were, champagne glasses, the whole deal, because I own the whole thing, basically, right? And of course, Black Friday came, so the offer came off the table. But I was working hard. I would fly to Toronto, for example, work with the PR team, and do, for 3 hours, I would do back-to-back radio shows. Then I'd go do TSN. I'd go do Bob McCowan. I was just doing the whole circuit, promoting full contact poker all by myself. We didn't have a team of people, or ambassadors or whatever. So I was able to build that from nothing. And since then, obviously, I've been with Gigi Poker for the last year. And Gigi Poker, when I signed on, it was like a fleggling company. It was kind of smallish, in terms of their marketing department or whatever. It was growing, in a sense, because people enjoyed it. And then I signed on with them, and I'm blown away with how quickly, Gigi Poker has become the #1 place to play online poker, primarily because of the software, but also now more people getting a chance to play on Gigi Poker and seeing how cool and fun it is. But I'm definitely proud to see, because that's kind of why I signed on with Gigi. I'm like, well, let's see if we can do this again. If we can run a small company up into the big one, and to see it surpassing the number of its competitors, on a daily basis, is I didn't think it would happen that fast. So I was certainly blown away to see just how big Gigi Poker's gotten in such a short period of time.
Wow, yeah, that is really cool. Gigi, by the way, doing tons of promotions here throughout the winter. And I was on the broadcast yesterday, and I know they have the WSOP Winter Circuit Series running through January 10th. So if that's your thing, go follow Daniel and stay up to date with all the latest there. It is definitely crazy to see how that landscape has changed over the, last 2 decades, because that's how long it's been. This is almost 15 years ago what we're watching right now, and it's just crazy to think that all of that has moved so fast. By the way, Brandon Adams all in here and at risk with the King-9 against Lampkin's Ace-Queen. Not looking too good there for Brandon. Let's take some more questions here. I am Groot says, Daniel, do you have any crazy stories from playing poker at Caesars Windsor? That's a side street.
What's funny? When I went to Windsor, it was me and Evelyn Ing. We were dating back then when we were teenagers. We went to Windsor and we stayed there for a couple of months. But we played in a private game there called Farmer Jim's. It was Farmer Jim's game, and it was a private game in Windsor, and I don't know, it was 15-30 limit hold'em or something stupid. And I remember Earl and a bunch of these guys that we played with would sleep on the floor, in between sessions. They never went home. They just stayed. And it was definitely it was a fun time. We were at a hotel, which was a big deal as a teenager. Wow, we're staying in a hotel. It's kind of cool. It was like traveling for poker before, I actually did start traveling in a real sense to, the U.S. and stuff. So yeah, definitely some fun times back in Windsor. I don't remember specifically playing in the casino. I just remember playing in the private games.
Yeah, the private game scene has been here to stay for a very long time. And sadly, in Vegas, that has now taken over some of the high-stakes cash games. Luckily, we can bring some of those to the PokerGO studio every now and then for some great action on Poker After Dark and Full Tilt Poker. We just saw Brandon Adams get eliminated. 5 players remaining. Look at that chip lead, by the way. Holy moly. That is an easy game for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely a good spot. And I will say this, it's a better spot today than it would have been then, even because, today people have a much deeper understanding of ICM. So when that's the case, the chip leader has even more of an advantage because people are folding. They're trying to wait each other out. People didn't do that quite as much back then. Like they didn't quite understand. They still played the way they played, on the conservative side for the most part, but it wasn't like you had this like free reign to just, go all in every hand because people, they would call you. They were not like worried about going from 5th to 4th as much as, some of the professionals of today, because there's profit there. There's like a lot of, money to be made by just sometimes folding.
Moha Jerry picking up ace king here. Let's see if this goes anywhere.
And cold for him with a raise in front.
All in.
And now Lampkin once again all in with his pocket eights.
C1.
Lee Markle now with a decision.
You're not involved in this one, so let's keep the action rolling. Big question coming in from Jack Knox on YouTube. He says, Daniel, what's your take on Gigi bringing in Dan Bilzerian? Jack says, he seemed like an odd choice. How do you feel about that, Daniel?
I thought it was absolutely freaking brilliant, frankly. And it's something that I've said even before I was with Gigi. I was like, why is this guy not working with a company? Because listen, when you think about like Dan Bilzerian's following, right? You think about a lot of young knuckleheads, right? Might have more money than they should. And like, isn't that exactly the kind of players that you want to play with? It's the ability to reach like a wider audience. There's a bunch of people in the world who don't know who Phil Hellmuth is, but they know who Dan Bilzerian is, and they know that when they think poker, they think Dan. So putting aside his shenanigans, he's the Hugh Hefner of our era. I don't really give a shit about that kind of stuff, right? Like I know how he is with his people. Like he's not an abusive person to women or whatever. Like the women that hang with him, so many are paid models or whatever, they have a blast. They travel on yachts, they drink champagne or whatever. And I don't live in a world of like extreme wokeness where we should be like, condemning those that are like, I appreciate people who just like, I disagree with this guy on so much stuff, but I respect the fact that he's honest about what he truly believes. He says some things that are outlandish or whatever, but bigger picture, I think if you're a poker player and you're professional, if you think about, the bottom line is you're trying to make the most amount of money, right? And people always say, well, we want more fish in the game. We want more suckers. This is an exact route to bringing those people in, right? How do you think you get them exactly? Like, who are you trying to market to, right? This is exactly the kind of people I want to market to. I want people to come into the game thinking like, oh, yeah, I'm great at poker. Poker's easy, and then coming and, making the games better for everybody else. So if you think big picture, you see that signing Dan is a very, very good idea.
Yeah, it's interesting. People who are commenting in the chat saying that, wasn't he just exposed for his fake lifestyle? But at the end of the day, it is about how he's being perceived by his fans and followers. And if those people love...
It's stupid, exposed, big deal, right? Whatever, because he had a company that was paying for him to have all these things. The bottom line is he had all these things or whatever, and he has made like more money in poker than 99% of people, right? Like he's made a ton of money, partly not because, I'm not saying he's a wizard that beats Ike Haxton and all the geniuses, but he plays in games where he's playing with bad players, and that's part of poker skill is playing in games where you have a big advantage.
First ballot Hall of Famer as far as game selection goes. That's something that can be said about.
You got to think about with Dan too. Is like when you know the guy a little deeper, like he says things kind of like Dave Portnoy from Barstool, or whatever. They say things just to annoy people, just to get people riled up. Like he did this thing where he had this picture of him with a bunch of women in a pool. And he said, Happy National Women's Day. They're good for something or something like that. I can't remember what it was, right? And people are like, oh, my God, how offensive to him. He's clearly trying to get a rise out of you. You know what I mean? And it's working, right? So, yeah.
That's true. For those just tuning in, we are watching the 2006 10K WSOP circuit event in Tunica. 241 entries, $755,000 up top. Yes, top heavy was the way to go back in those days. Oh, the dogs are here. I love it.
The dogs are freaking out. Jeff Jewell just showed up, so he said they're greeting him at the door.
That's awesome. People were wondering if the dogs are home. But yeah, that's good to see them. Let's see. I'm gonna get caught up on these questions. Let's see what happens in his hand.
Not much in there though for Daniel.
All in.
Oh, and King's going all in.
It looked like he was going to check, and then he theatrically goes all in. And Daniel got no help on that flop.
You got it.
And gives it up.
You asked me, I will.
I'll take a look. Pocket tens, that was the best hand at all times.
BK playing premium cards.
BK climbing, but I don't know why I'd want to give Daniel.
Seeing this footage makes me curious as well, Daniel, because when I started getting into poker and watching all these old broadcasts and basically rewatching them over and over again, because it was all I really had to learn from and to sort of pick up some stuff from, was how often on the broadcast you were basically calling out someone's hand and then making the call. And then, you know, you were right, but you were also wrong because it cost you a lot of chips, by the way. Shout out to Rocky and Apollo. Which one's this?
This is Rocky.
Oh,
Rocky's the tinier one. And
So-
Apollo's the one right there in the picture.
So cute. I love it. So what I'm wondering about you calling up people's hands and being wrong, but also then, you know, showing that you were right about your analysis, how did that affect you, the way you played in the future? Because this was all shown on TV, you know, 04, 05, 06. And then clearly players must have thought that they could either get away with more bluffs or perhaps they were like, let's not bluff this guy because he knows what I have.
Yeah, no, I think it helped overall. I mean, and the funny thing is, like, a lot of people think, like, oh, you know, ESPN just cuts it. So when Daniel's right, they show it. And when he's wrong, they don't. But the truth is, I really wasn't wrong very often because I didn't say it unless I was quite certain, you know, out loud anyway. But I definitely think there's an intimidation factor about doing that. Like when you tell a guy in the middle of the hand, he's like, well, you have aces. We all know it. If I say that, and the guy does have aces, he's like, well, I guess, I mean, if I have my cards are face up, should I be betting? Or should I not be betting?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. All right, here's a big hand.
Putting the pressure on Daniel again.
You realize 90 didn't get it, huh?
I thought you might have a plan.
Daniel says he feels like the old guard at age 31. These hands are making him feel older by the minute.
I'm not folding. Don't worry about that. It's obvious, like, I'm at least coming. So, question is, stick it to you now or stick it to you later?
Well, if Daniel sticks it to him now, BK is going to call.
What did you do last time?
Later. Last time was later. Let's do later. I call.
Daniel calls again.
No
Interesting table talk with so many decisions left to be made.
Yeah, basically giving away kind of like, you know, my hand class a little bit, but I was okay with that. I was trying to get information from him as well.
He looks very comfortable.
Once more, Daniel comes up short.
This hand like a replay of their last hand, and each time a nice flop for King's pocket tens.
All in.
Ain't me, man. Tell you what, that's
Who didn't see that coming?
Oh, brother. You got it.
And once again, Daniel folds.
Those are spots where I think a lot of players during my era, they would be re-raising with my ace-jack always, just getting it in, you know, because it's fine. You know, you're late position raise, you're shorthanded, you can do that. But I was much more willing to see flops in spots like that and avoid, you know, taking, you know, high variance lines, which is just getting it in pre and hoping that they, you know, hoping you win a flip.
Yeah, definitely. And that goes into that whole small ball strategy and you know, basically campaigning that for about a decade. And now, you know, times have changed, and I think small ball still applies, but also there's been a lot more research done and a lot more sims have been run to find some different bet sizing, which you also alluded to yesterday on the broadcast about how the bet sizing element of heads up poker is such a you know, complicated thing, but also such a helpful thing if you're trying to, you know, make it more difficult for other people. Greg is asking on YouTube, what was your first ever endorsement in poker? And he says, was it Poker Mountain with TJ Cloutier?
My first endorsement in poker could have been poker. It could have been Poker Mountain.
I mean, I don't even know about that. What was Poker
I
Mountain?
think it was, you know, Diego Cordovez and Adam Schoenfeld. They, you know, started playing. I liked the guys, and, you know, I thought, okay, let's work with them a little bit. It never really got off the ground. The software was kind of an issue that, you know, just wasn't good enough, you know, so it didn't really get off the ground. But, you know, I just want to say, speaking of small ball, like the version of poker today is smaller ball than what we played back then, but it's also bigger ball. So essentially what you've seen is more polarization and bet sizing, right? So typically in the old days, people were betting, you know, a middling size, let's say 75% of pot or whatever. Now people are betting like 20%, 25%, or sometimes 1.5x pot, right? So the middling size has been is used less often. So it's really kind of an interesting, you know, development. And I think the main reason for that is the, you know, introduction of solvers, finding spots where it's like, all right, you know, your range has a big advantage here, so bet bigger. Your range doesn't here, so bet smaller. And that's what, you know, people have learned how to execute.
Yeah, definitely times have changed. And here against King.
5-9-8. Both players pair one of their whole cards. Negreanu with the lead with his pair of eights.
Daniel finally hits part of a flop. Brian King also got a gut shot straight draw with his pair.
King checks. And Daniel bets 50,000.
50?
And a call from King. So these two will go to the turn. Ace of hearts, Negreanu now with a heart draw.
And the ace, always a scare card. You never know if your opponent has it.
Now Daniel figures his opponent does not have the ace after King checks.
Yeah, that hits you, Daniel.
Daniel comes in with 80,000.
Another good read.
Always scared of the ace.
Check
Everyone.
raise if that card don't hit. Nice hand, sir. Take it down.
King
Give
folds.
Daniel back a ton of chips right there.
What ton? You only gave me a little bit.
So funny how there was always a scare card, and it always worked back in the day. Shout out to everyone watching across all our platforms, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. We really appreciate it. A special shout out to our fans on YouTube. Let's hit 250 likes. So smash that like button if you enjoy the content. And also, don't forget to subscribe, because we are trying to hit 100,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel before the end of the year. So only a few days left. We are very, very close. And you know, having Rocky and Apollo on the stream should be reason enough for you to subscribe to our channel. That's the best we can do right now. It is the best we can do. More questions coming in. I will make sure to get to those as we get through the show. Please send in more of them as we can you know, get some more answers from Daniel here on the show. By the way, Daniel, New Year's, any plans, or is it still going to be a little bit of home drinking, maybe a nice little dinner?
Yeah, we're gonna go to the club. It's a maskless club with about 8,000 people. We're all just gonna get crazy and spit on each other. No,
Oh, beautiful.
me and my wife, like, we're both homebodies. We've actually bonded and gotten even closer during this time, because, like, you know, there's really no other distractions outside of the time we spend with each other, and we love it. We don't get bored of each other. We really enjoy it. She's very independent. She's basically, like, created spaces in the house. All upstairs is hers, kind of thing. She just bought a Tempo, which, if you haven't gotten one, it's an exercise equipment thing. It's freaking awesome. Like, it's no joke, pretty damn cool, the Tempo. I used it last night and did a workout with it. It's really, really cool. But it's been great. We're probably just going to stay home. Maybe we'll have some champagne, watch some stuff, play with the puppies. But no, like, you know, no plans of any kind to be around other people or anything like that. We'll just, you know, spend some QT with each other, you know, watch some crime shows. She loves those, like, you know, Casey Anthony or whatever. There was, like, these crazy, like, crime mystery shows. So sometimes I watch those with her.
Have you gotten into chess?
Last night it was really fun in bed, before bed. I was teaching her some game theory, and it was really cool how good she did. Because I have this, like, you know, this just like a GTO kind of, like, you know, thing that I can use to practice on or whatever. And I was using it with her, and she did really, really well. I was really impressed, because she hasn't played a lot of poker in a long time, but I was like, wow. I mean, she got some answers right that were not easy. So I was really impressed. Maybe she just threw a dart and got lucky, but pretty good.
So how does that work? Give us an example of a question that would come up, and what is it, like a multiple choice thing, or do you just assess a range? And
so it would be a question like this. Okay, so you raise bases. The guy with the big blind called. The flop is queen, seven, deuce, and you have two aces. The player checks, right? And it's up to you. How often would you check? How often would you bet small? How often would you bet big? And how often would you bet? How would you bet medium, and how often would you bet really big, right? So then I would ask her for percentages. I'm like, all right, so how often would you check? She's like, oh, aces and almost never. And she would give me percentages, and then you punch it in, and then you take a look, and you see, like, wow, okay, you know, she was pretty darn close to being exactly right on a lot of them.
Huh.
I was impressed.
That's very interesting. Yeah, the studying methods for all the GTO stuff is sort of fascinating, but it's also sort of scary to someone who doesn't really get into those streets, because I feel as though you basically go hand by hand, situation by situation, right?
Well, you go, like, it's called, like, each decision is called, like, a node, right? So a node is like, okay, in this spot, when a guy goes check, check, bet, you know, for example, like, you know, and then you play out the board, like, what would your correct response be here in this spot? And you can, like, answer that question based on what your entire range should do or the specific hand that you do. So there's value in learning both, right? Because you need to know in some spots when, let's say, for example, there's a spot where your range should check like 98% of the time. As a human, you should probably just always be checking it, right? So when you bet, even if you have a very good hand, you're making a mistake by betting, right? So like say, for example, you know, you call the bet on the turn out of position and the flush card came. There are certain spots where you should never bet the river when the flush card comes, just ever.
Right.
So if you are betting there, you're making a theoretical mistake. Now, you can do that if you have a real good reason, exploitatively, but if you're trying to play game theory, every time you do something that the solver doesn't like, you're making yourself exploitable yourself.
Here's Lee Markholt all in with Jack 8. King involved here with the pocket tens again. The third time picking up pocket tens. What do we got here?
Got worse for Lee Markholt.
And Kia Mahachary figuring out how exactly to work this.
You play him slow, you play him fast, and with aces, generally you just want to isolate the worst hand and go heads up against it.
Kia's announced a raise, but not how much.
119. We got to make it another 119.
I'm all in.
Kia pushes, and this is our degree all-in moment.
Kia, I hope you got what you say you got, brother. Because I can't call with tens.
Painful for King, but he had to get out.
I hope you have ace-king. Please have ace-king.
Now the news is worse, Mr. Markholt.
Brian King extremely happy folding tens there, of course. Pretty good situation there to fold tens, given the ICM implications and the range of Mohajiri probably not including many hands that he can beat there with tens, especially back in 2006.
Put a couple of jacks up there, please.
And now the flop is 6, 10, 7. Oh, boy, Kia's glad he got rid of Brian King, who would have flopped a set.
Look at this, he walks all the way out of the building.
It's a gutter.
Oh man, that's hilarious. Would have been a set for Brian King.
Oh, that's why they went crazy.
Yeah.
Bad luck in Tunica. Last year he finished 5th here when his aces were cracked. Now it looks like he could have cracked aces and had a pile.
By the way, did you notice Charlie Charisi in the background there?
No, I don't know who that is.
The floor guy from WSOP.
Oh.
Big Charlie. Look
There,
at that.
yeah, I see Charlie.
That's so funny. You see some fun characters in the background sometimes on these shows.
And meanwhile, Brian King bemoaning his bad luck in Tunica. Last year he finished 5th here when his aces were cracked. Now it looks like he could have cracked aces and had a pile of chips.
Markholt needs help. He is at risk now. Turn card is a 5, and it does give him some help.
Well, he goes from a gut shot to an up and down straight draw.
Kia sweating the river.
So I feel good.
1-9, 1-9.
Markholt needs a 9 or a 4 for a straight, or he is eliminated.
River card is a deuce, and that will finish it.
All right, we are down to three-handed play here in this 2006 WSOP circuit event. 10K buy-in, $755,000 up top. Daniel still in with Brian King and the gentleman there with the aces who just got us down to three-way action. Let's see if we got any more questions coming in. People asking, is this just a watch party for old WSP main events? Well, yes. This show is called Run It Back, twice a week, every Tuesday and every Thursday. I watch some old school poker footage. Sometimes it's very old. Like this case, it's almost 15 years old. Sometimes it's more recent, like I did with Lucky Chewy a couple of weeks ago. We watched the 2019 High Roller final table from the WSOP, and that, of course, made for some very interesting insights from one of poker's brightest minds, as he gave some great advice on, how to play in those scenarios. And sometimes I get Brent Hanks on the show and we drink alcohol at 10 a.m. and just watch some Helmuth blow-ups. So this show basically has it all. Follow our channel on Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook. We are live on all those at the same time, so don't miss out if you are on your favorite channel right now. That's where we will be. And in the new year, I'm planning to have lots more of these shows. And let's listen to this. When live poker comes back on PokerGO, I will try to have the winner of US Poker Open, Poker Masters, Super High Roller Bowl on the show the following week to relive the action and break it all down, get some strategy analysis, and hopefully guys like Stephen Chidwick or Isaac Haxton or David Peters are willing to share some insights on these big final tables. So clearly, I have big plans with Run It Back, and we're going to keep doing some fun cash games on the side, rewatch some of those. And yeah, if you love poker, this is the right place to be. By the way, sixes for you here against King. Hold on, let's pause it here.
Yeah, I remember being frustrated with Brian King because, and I didn't know what his cards were, but he was showing a lot. But like, he was playing big ball poker. I didn't want to be doing that. Like he was going all in. He was making big raises and stuff. So I remember internally being a little bit frustrated by that and thinking, all right, I need to snap this guy off. I need to flop something and send him to the rail.
Right. And clearly, it was not in your advantage that he was willing to take such big risks because you had a big chip lead and you were also just keen to pick them all off one at a time.
Yeah, basically when you're, leader, whatever, you want to play small ball, you just want to have like low resistance, not playing like marginal spots for big chips. But he was putting me in really tough spots. He was because he was making big bets. He happened like, when you look back at the footage, like he happened to just have it every time, but you don't know that when you're playing specifically. So sometimes you might think like, is this guy just going like crazy, running me over with like ace-7 offsuit and stuff like that? But as you see, all the hands that he's turned up with have been, premium solid hands.
Yeah, definitely. I think he just bet here again.
Measure out 500, 4,000.
Oh, wow.
Stick it all in.
And Daniel puts in the...
Sorry?
That's nuts that I did that. That's crazy that I went all in with sixes here after getting 3-bet.
So do you think that's probably a live tell, maybe a bit of frustration, just maybe...
A combination of those things, and also just like me, thinking that his tendencies, I think it was his bet size. I don't remember what it was, but I think it was his bet size that screamed to me that he wasn't that strong. I think partly because he would be, I think it was a question of his tendencies. And then when he checked or when he didn't bet big, like that he would, if he did have a queen or better, that he would bet significant size. And I thought maybe too that if he had 2 10s or something, I can get him to fold that hand with the sixes. But I think I really felt like he had ace king, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, again, shows his cards.
Oh, you never had me. You never had me. I had you. I had you.
I know you got that, I call.
I know.
I know you have
Remember I told you I had a plan for you? That was it. I'm done now.
Oh, you definitely put him in his place in a way where also maybe he'll be less likely to, get out of line in future hands when a moment like this happens.
Yeah, and it's funny because I wasn't bluffing, but I think when you show a hand like that in that spot, people internally they mentally think like, oh, he was bluffing there, but I really wasn't really bluffing that much. So now you might start thinking that I was bluffing more than I was, because really back in those days, there was not a lot of point in bluffing. I didn't really do a lot of bluffing.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I just got a message from one of my producers here in my ear saying that we are doing a giveaway on Instagram. So we're giving away 2 goodie bags filled with PokerGO goodies. I believe it includes a hat, a shirt, some playing cards, and a whole bunch of good stuff. So go on over to PokerGO on Instagram and find the post, which is which is near the top of our feed that has Daniel in here with the 2006 circuit event Run It Back show. Leave a comment on that post. Everyone who leaves a comment is automatically entered into the draw, and next week on Tuesday I will announce the winners of the goodie bag. So please head on over to us on Instagram, make sure to follow us there and leave a comment on that post, and we will give 2 people a PokerGO goodie bag with some fun stuff in there. And if you're a poker fan, then you should be very, very happy to win that, because there's some awesome stuff in there. Last week's winner, by the way, was Luck STR91 on Instagram. That was the winner last week from the goodie bag giveaway. We're doing 2 this week. So head on over there right now, like the post, leave a comment, and make sure that you win. And we can make sure to send you that stuff. All right, we're still watching this 06 final table. We're still 3-handed, and there's 755K up top. So definitely a massive tournament. What I'm curious about, Daniel, this final table and these events, what was the structure like? How long did these final tables last? And was there a lot of room to play, or was it more so a bit more of a turbo towards the end?
No, they were decent. I mean, for the 10Ks, you're looking at like a 6 to 8 hour final table, which is reasonable. There wasn't all that crapshooty. There was certainly enough play. I mean, obviously when you get shorthanded late, it goes up there in any tournament, but I would say it was just right. It wasn't excessive, but it also wasn't a turbo.
Right.
It felt like a turbo a little bit now because I had such a massive chip lead, so my opponents were short. So you're effectively you're playing short stack poker when 2 of the 3 guys have short stacks.
Right.
And I think he's just doing it to irritate Brian
230
King.
more?
And actually, BK's getting a little irritated.
170 more?
Even when Daniel irritates you, he does it in a nice way.
Let me see here.
It would be 190,000 more chips that Daniel would have to commit to make the call.
You fold yet?
Not yet, but I'm coming. I'm probably folding.
Yeah.
Chances are you're okay.
Really?
You can relax. It's good.
All right.
So it's 190 more?
I don't know if I believe you or not.
Yeah, you're probably okay. How much?
He's lying.
He's toying
I'm
with
just
it.
trying to. If I get the right price, I'll call you. Otherwise,
I don't think he's going to get the right price, but he seems like he's got BK in the palm of his hand.
you know what I'm gonna do? Since I'm not getting the right price here against your ace 10, I'm gonna throw it away. Take it down.
Good read.
Ace 10? Yeah.
He showed again.
He had it every time.
He did have it every time. He's shown down more pocket pairs than anyone I've ever seen. It's pretty funny to see that. Yeah, so PokerGO on Instagram, that's the place to be. Gillis Summers on Facebook asks, what event do you see yourself winning your next bracelet in? And let me just, amend it a little bit. Which event would you love to win, if you have any preference?
Well, it's funny because I would never have said this until this year. Like it wouldn't even have been on my radar. But now all of a sudden I'm actually looking forward to the big, heads up tournaments because I've got a lot more experience in it, And so when you combine my actual experience now just playing the game itself and then incorporating tournament strategy to it too, I think I'll be a monster. I think I'm going to move up the rankings in terms of like guys you might want to bet on for that one. So that one is definitely the one. Oh, and that's simply because I'm so entrenched right now in heads up poker.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a ton of sense. How much do you still care about where you ultimately will end up as far as bracelets? And I cannot imagine you ever slowing down your play during the summer. But of course, the fields are never going to get smaller than they are now. So what's a realistic expectation there?
Yeah, so like my career, it is what it is. Like I won the very first bracelet event, and the first event I ever played in the World Series Poker, I won it. So it was all downhill from there, right? And I've got like 10 second place finishes and 6 bracelets. So I mean, if I converted half of those, I'd have like 11 right now. And so I definitely feel like I've been running under par in those spots. But hopefully in the future I can get on a run. And I don't really know. Like I'm pretty content with my career. I'm always going to look for things to motivate me. And of course now Brian King has kings because that's what he was in this thing, a card rack. But yeah, no, I don't have a specific number in mind. But I'm always going to try to win the player of the years and stuff like that. And along the way, win some bracelets. Yeah,
definitely crazy how you have 10 second place finishes. I mean, a few more, even if, only 3 or 4 more go your way, which probably should be around expectation at the very minimum, then all of a sudden you're much closer to that one guy who keeps touting how many bracelets he's won over the years. There came a question came in earlier wondering if Helmuth was always the same guy, even when you first got to play against him, or whether he's changed over time into this persona.
No. He was more this persona before. Like when I first met him, and I remember going to the World Series in 1996, and he was playing in a cash game right next, and I was playing in a 10-20 limit hold'em game, and I saw the chair fly, and he freaked out. And George the Greek and John Benetti back in the day was like, hang on, Phil, and he freaked out, was yelling and screaming, doing his shtick. That's all real. I'd say what I've noticed with age is that outside of those moments that still exist, he's even kinder than he was back then. He's a lot more, I don't know. I think he's a good person. I really do. He acts like a complete jackass at the poker table. I'm the opposite. Like I'm a nice guy at the poker table and a complete jackass away from it. He's the opposite. So he's a good guy. And I think over the years he's learned it's very difficult for him to tap into humility. That's not easy for him, but I think he's trying. I think he is trying to find areas where he can sort of, poke fun at himself in a way. Like he can look back at those moments and laugh at how silly he's being and how ridiculous, So he's much better about that. Like, cause we needle him. He likes the needles as long as they're good and creative, cause I always, when I play with him, I'm going to stick the needle in as much as possible.
Yeah, when High Stakes Poker Season 9 comes around, we have to have you side by side with Phil just to get the most out of him because, man, over the years, there's been some iconic moments. By the way, if you love Helmuth blowups, Holidays with Helmuth is a must-watch. All right, Brian King, arms in the sky, pocket kings. We're down a heads-up play. One time.
It held up.
Sorry?
Like Brian King really deserved to win this tournament considering like the card distribution and how many big hands he had in spots. I felt like he was destined to win this thing.
Oh, and my bad. We're not even heads up yet. He just doubled up with king, so we're still 3-handed here in this this Tunica event. Keep those questions coming, by the way, for Daniel in the chat. As you guys can see, we are 3-handed. We're getting closer and closer to the end of this final table. Don't forget to smash that like button. Subscribe to our channels. We are trying to hit 100K subscribers. Oh, by the way, this might be funny. Let's see. The nuts, always a good segment.
As far as food etiquette goes, there's no written rules on it.
I don't think the table is a place for people to eat at.
If you're in a good game, you don't want to get up and leave.
I hate eating at the table. Get all the cuts greasy. That's gross.
This is the life of a champion right here.
You want to eat? Go outside and eat.
You can't have an issue with it if you play high poker. There's no time to be leaving the table.
Let's gamble, baby.
When you're digesting food, it takes away some of your brain power.
It doesn't take away from my laser-like focus.
So I avoid eating.
You shouldn't have a napkin in your hand when it's your turn to act. It's bad poker etiquette.
Did I bust out when I was eating?
It's no help to Chad Brown, who was eliminated.
It's possible.
Generally, people who are eating will not play a hand or not get involved in a hand unless they have a good hand. I'll just use that information to my advantage.
He eliminates Lyle Berman.
That's why I never order food unless I have the chip lead.
Yeah, we went to a poker game and a delicatessen broke out.
We got French fries now.
Your average player should not attempt to eat. Your average player should just conduct themselves over their cards, and it's all they can do to not, drool on themselves. Don't eat at the table.
Oh my God.
Can't be all loosey-goosey eating a sandwich.
My God, seeing that makes me sort of question ever eating at the table again. That looked disgusting, and clearly
the grossest thing about eating at a table is like your fingers are very dirty. It's very germ heavy, especially now with all the sensitivity we have. I remember a video of a guy who was eating a Caesar salad, and he didn't have a fork or a knife because they didn't bring it to him, and he was using his fingers and licking them and going right after touching chips and all that. I was like, that is the epitome of nasty.
Oh my God, I remember that. I think it's a friend of Adam Schwartz, actually. That guy.
I know who it is.
Yeah.
I know who it is. Kelly Kilmer.
Oh man, that's just disgusting. I've eaten a bag of potato chips at the poker table with chopsticks. That I felt really smart when I figured that one out. By the way, we're still three-handed here. The gentleman who just ran into Kings is down to only 1 or 2 big blinds. So clearly. He's going to be eliminated very soon. By the way, was this pre-vegan or were you already vegan back here?
No, I was vegan by 2006. I think it was around 2003, 2002 when I went full vegan. I was vegetarian for about a year and then switched over. So yeah, this was full vegan in Tunica, Mississippi.
Wow.
Then I had a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because there wasn't a lot of I remember waking up one morning, going to the breakfast buffet thing, and I was like, you guys have cereal? And they're like, cereal? He was like, we got fried chicken. I was like, what? For 9 o'clock in the morning? Really? That's a thing? So yeah. And I remember calling and asking if there was a health food store. And the guy on the phone was like, health food store? Like, yo, hey Larry, we got a health food store around here? Like, no, he's literally said, I could hear him say, he's like, tell that queer to go back to California where he's from. We ain't got no health food store over here.
Oh my God.
I heard him say exactly that.
Oh man. That's crazy. I mean, as much as eating at the table can be disgusting, you probably played a lot of poker during the smoking era.
That was the beginning of my career in my early 20s, and it was tough. I remember writing in journals as I played because I would keep track of my mental state, how much worse off I was and tilted I was when I was next to some smokers. I remember writing in a session, guy on my left and right are smoking nonstop, I'm tilted or whatever. I moved seats to the other side of the table where it was getting it less, and all of a sudden my mental state was like, feeling more calm and relaxed and not as annoyed because it was tough. I remember the first time I went to London to play in a tournament, the ceilings were very low, very low ceilings, and everybody was smoking, and they were all like, fuck you about it. They were blowing it in your face kind of thing and not, being kind or respectful in any way. So I remember busting out in an hour because I just couldn't take it. Couldn't take it. So I was very happy and thankful to see, the switch because I don't know how I would have remained healthy if I would have had to sit through that for 20 years of sitting next to because if you're next to smokers, it's secondhand smoke's just as bad. It's not any better really.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts to think about. People used to smoke in trains and planes and poker rooms, and yeah, I remember my first home game that I used to play in as well. Everyone was smoking. There were ashtrays on every table, and clothing just might as well toss them out.
Yeah,
that was
the disgusting thing. I remember going to the pool hall. And my mom would be like, how was school today? And then she smelled my jacket and be like, you didn't go to school today. Like, you smell like smoke. What's that from? I'm like, it's so obvious. You couldn't hide it.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a very good point. All right, final chance for everyone to get their questions in for Daniel. If they are good, I will ask them as we are getting closer and closer to the final table ending here of the 2006 Tunica event. By the way, quite a bit of love for your masterclass. For people unfamiliar, Daniel, what do you teach people in your masterclass?
So the masterclass is it's got a wide range of things. But the one thing I think that most people are very interested in is body language. I focus on sort of basic things you can look for, how to do so, what you should glean from certain information. We also talk about how to learn the game at a much higher level, right? Because this was after I'm myself working with a couple coaches and taking the game to the next level. So there's some mathematical formulas that are pretty easy to do to figure out, like, what should be your fold frequency, right? So for example, game theory optimal, I'll ask you this one, Remco. If somebody bets pot on the river, what should your fold frequency be?
And that's just like no cards, that doesn't matter. It's just like
in GTO in general, if the person bets pot on the river, what is the GTO baseline for your fold frequency? How often should you fold?
Wow, you're putting me on the spot. I'm gonna throw a number at you. I'm gonna say pot bet. I'm gonna go 30%.
50%. So you basically do the math this way. You go, what is the bet? And then you divide it by the pot plus the bet. So that's 1/2.
Okay.
So if he bet twice the pot, if he bet 2x pot, then you do 2/2 plus 1, which is 67%. So that means you should fold 67% against the time. So that basic, like, stuff like that, and explaining how it works, explaining combinatorics in terms of like how to like understand ranges in terms of the combinations of cards. Like in the old days, we used to think like, well, this guy either has ace king or he's got, tens or something, right? Well, how many combinations is that? It's not as simple as ace king versus tens. There's 16 combos of ace king, and there's only 6 of tens.
Right.
So he's way more likely to have ace king if you put him on either hand, right? So understanding the game on a deeper level and doing so in a way that I think I'm uniquely qualified to do so in a way that is digestible for the average person, because a lot of these guys, they talk in such, they use such language that is very, very difficult if you don't understand stack to pot ratio and all this kind of stuff, SPR and blah, 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 using abbreviations. So I think I do a pretty good job of explaining high level concepts in a way that's digestible for people.
Right. What was the response from the people at Masterclass about what you were talking about? Because I can only imagine that when Gordon Ramsay talks about cooking or Gary Kasparov talks about chess, people have a bit of an idea of those games and how they work. And I can imagine that poker might be the most out there kind of thing that's been offered over there.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I remember in the meetings beforehand with Masterclass asking them, so like, what do you guys want, right? Do you want something geared at beginners or do you want something more high level advanced? And they said, well, we find that typically with Masterclass, like people, respond more to the high end stuff. And I was like, all right. So then I gave them a formula of like high end for, the average person or high end for high end. And they're like, let's do the one that's for the average person. Because like the super high end one is like a little bit, much for the average person to describe. So, but they did a really good job of digesting it. They were blown away with the response to the class. Like the amount of money they spent marketing my class specifically was astronomical because it did amazingly well. Like USA Today did a piece on all the master classes and they ranked them, saying like which one was the best one. Of all the ones, you're talking Serena Williams, Gordon Ramsay, all these ones, my class was rated #1. So my master class was rated #1. We put a lot of work into it. I think for the value in terms of what you're paying, it isn't like an absolute steal. Because I think if I were to teach that class in person, with a group of people, that's like going to cost $50,000. But you get basically this, the gist of it for, whatever it is, whatever the subscription fee is for Masterclass.
Right. Wow. That's awesome. So people, if you're watching and if you need to brush up on your poker game, do consider the Masterclass. Also probably a good gift for any poker loving friends. All right, we're heads up. Let's listen in.
Big plans for you, my friend. Brian King's had some success recently with a very conservative style.
If I think I'm good, I call. Why do I think I'm going to win? Because I make the best decisions. If you re-raise a small amount, it could get real interesting.
BK's got a certain style that I think in the end game I can exploit. Stick it to you now or stick it to you later?
He'd probably tell me I probably won't play enough pots to win.
Do it! Come on!
Can Daniel beat me day in, day out? I don't know. We'll see. He went after me at the wrong time.
My plan against him is to rob him blind. Oh boy, it's gonna be sweet, dude.
That's spot on, right?
I just mean by playing more pots pre-flop, coming in with more raises, more c-bets. I wasn't talking about elaborate like 3-barrel bluffs or anything like that. I'm just talking about so when I say rob him blind, I meant grind him down because he was waiting for big hands, right? And he got a bunch of them, but like heads up, you can't sit around and wait. So my goal was to just keep my dukes up, keep my guard up, not fall for any big traps, if you will.
Right. So let's see how you like your heads up game.
Yeah, right.
Check the option. So no raises pre-flop between these two. Here we go. Ace, 8, 9, a pair.
Sorry?
I was doing a lot more limping too, I think, because I felt like I wanted to keep the stack to pot ratio as deep as possible and really just take very little risk. Because I felt like post-flop, I could just steal a lot of pots with some c-bets and stuff.
Yeah, and the most foreign thing to recreational players is heads up, because you hardly ever get to play heads up. So it's so hard to become experienced in it. And it's also probably the one part of the game back then, especially, that you had the biggest edge in.
So notice in this spot, like I c-bet the flop with the queen deuce, but once he shows interest, I was done with the hand. Like in a lot of spots, you can bet again with queen deuce here. You could 3-bet this hand if you wanted to. But I was like, okay, if he calls the flop, he's going to have something. I beat 10 jack, 6-7, 10-7 anyway, so there's no reason to bet. My queen high might be good. So I really just put the option of bluffing away after the flop. Once he showed interest on the flop, I figured, okay, he won't hit enough flops. He's going to fold more often on the flop than he should, I thought. So I can just c-bet every time, basically. And, when he shows interest, unless I have something big, shut down.
I like sick calls.
Yeah.
Maybe not this time. Most of the time it sounds pretty good.
So in this spot, obviously I'm thinking that he could have jack 10, 10-7, 6-7. And again, even though I have an ugly hand, queen deuce, I don't block any of those hands. Oh, I did call.
Wow.
Small, and I called.
Good hand.
Daniel said it. That was a sick call.
Oh, I remember now. So I called because he had a lot more combos with that than he did ace combos, because he was re-raising with an ace a lot, right? So when the ace flops, like there's a lot of straight draws that miss. Queen high beats them all, except for queen jack specifically, which 4's ace, I would have played.
Right. So in this case, you give him a few chips, but still a massive chip lead here. People are wondering if you missed the 10K events in Tunica because they clearly were good to you over time. Oh, there we go. I love that. What do we got here? King 9 suited or offsuit. You're limping again, so I'm guessing you limped every button maybe, or at least.
I was limping most of the time, yeah, against him, because he had a propensity to just 3-bet jam, right? So I was like, I don't want to waste the chips. I'll just limp in, play more post-flop poker with him, which I felt like I had an advantage on. And here we go. We got kings with a better kicker.
Bryant King, though, first to act. A check. Daniel comes with 30,000.
Raise.
See, this is a spot where he should not be raising with king 3. Not very often. He's supposed to just call.
Right. Because his hand is so strong, and unless you have a better king, there's not a lot of easy ways to continue, especially against the perceived range.
Right. Like if I just go all in. He stops me from bluffing here. And he's just getting it in bad.
All right, so let's listen in on the showdown.
Daniel Negreanu in good position to take the championship.
Dana, I thought you had the queen.
I understand. You got no choice once you put the 100 in.
With 2 cards to come, king's not dead yet.
And
looks like the king faithful calls for a 3.
That would pair BK's other hole card and give him kings up.
All right, now our turn card. It is a 5.
Now, ladies and gentlemen,
Daniel has played brilliantly today, had his way with BK most of this final table. And now for BK, a 4 or 5, and they would chop the pot. With a 3, Brian King would take the whole pot. Otherwise, Daniel Negreanu would be our champion.
And now here comes the river card. It is a 7, and Negreanu has done it.
Big win in 06, defeating Brian King heads up. Good memories of this whole trip as a whole. How is it to watch this again?
Yeah, it felt good. Like I said, I went there to go pick up about $500,000 so I could put it into full contact poker. Walked away with, $700 and something thousand. So a couple extra bucks too to put in the bankroll. Definitely felt like a trip worth taking. And I actually, despite like the food issue with Tunica, I really enjoyed going down there. People were very nice, very kind. I found my twang came out a lot more when I was down there. It's just, whatever it is. But no, it was fun. It was the only circuit event that I've ever won. I haven't played many of them. They're usually smaller buy-ins. But I do have a circuit win under my belt, and it was a good one. It was a memorable one for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely cool to relive this footage and watch it again. And this is you behind the cash doing the winner interview. Allows me to thank everyone so much for watching. On your way out, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. We're close to hitting 100K subscribers on our YouTube channel, and we'd love to hit that before the new year. So please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell as well. I am live twice a week with this show, with the exception of coming Thursday, as I may or may not be 5 glasses of champagne deep by the time the show usually airs. So we're going to skip Thursday Thursday night, where we're going to be back on Tuesday with a new Run It Back show. And of course, I'm very excited for the potential of bringing back live poker and bringing back some Run It Back shows with some current final tables. Everyone, thanks so much for watching. I already said that. Let's see what else we got going on here. Too many questions to answer here, and maybe we can do a masterclass Run It Back or something along those lines for a promotion in the future. That might actually be a lot of fun. All right, Daniel, thank you so much for being with us here today on the show. I really appreciate it. We'll do this again, I'm sure, in 2021. We'll find another thing from the archives to dive into. For now, everyone else, thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.
Go, yeah. Good stuff, man.
Thanks, man.